Alright, so far, out of all the videos you've seen me make, I've never did a, what they call it, a vlog or a talk while go. Because my only dead time to hold the camera and take any kind of video is while I'm driving from one job to another, as I'm doing right now, and it'll be a short one. A topic for discussion today. In the last 20 years, both in mechanical and body shops, technicians have been dropping out of this business and not re-entering, and the technicians entering this field have not been qualified. No schooling, no education. Many have come with no background, but experienced ones just don't exist. As of this year, 2020, and we're only into the second month, I've came across two very large body shops, three large body shops, and one was so large it has three big buildings. All the workers quit all at the same time, and I guess they were kind of pissed off. I'll save the names and protect the reputation of the body shop by not mentioning who they are, but in this case, I just came in this morning to another one, and there was only one employee left, and he was their oldest employee. And this is another issue. When your oldest employee is only 5 years old and you're a shop that's 10, 20, 30 years old, there's a pattern problem there. But other than that topic, I'm paying attention to driving and not what I'm saying. Other than that topic, the workers must have been pissed off because they took all the cars apart, it's a body shop, and left them all in pieces all over the place and then left. So you know something's up when that happens. I've been in a shop like that, and I was part of that before. Usually you really got to piss off all your workers at the same time, because they plan that ahead of time and then leave you high and dry. And I've seen that, and I've been in shops that's happened, and I completely understand. But get back to the lack of education, lack of experience, an ongoing problem, and all I'm seeing is shop owners saying, I cannot get qualified personnel. I can't get anybody reliable, educated. Reading or speaking English is optional. Often you go into a shop nowadays, I can't speak to many of the employees, and even the owners cannot communicate through some of the employees unless they have another shop employee who can translate for them. That has what it's come down to in this industry. In our area in San Francisco, you ain't gonna live here or buy a house unless you're making a 6-digit income. If they consider in San Francisco, as of 12 or 15 years ago, $37,000 for a single parent and child was considered poverty level. So if you can keep that in perspective, in some areas for $37,000 in the United States, you can put a down payment and pay for half your house. $37,000 here is not even a down payment, let alone you can't even buy an empty lot for less than usually $500,000. That's part of the other problem. Getting to the education, this is what I've seen in the last 30 years, and my dad and my grandfather have also repeated this to me and told this to me too, and I definitely see it as a pattern problem as the years and decades have progressed. Lack of education. In our state of California, when I just hit middle school, which was 6th grade, I believe, 6th grade, San Francisco at that time just divided up what they used to call juniors or kids entering high school at that age. They deemed them too young to be in a high school. They were too immature and too physically unable to defend or take care of themselves against bullies, amongst many regions. And they created something called a middle school. And at that time, there was still an auto shop, a metal shop, wood shop, many different electronics, full-blown electronics course classes that were the same kind of classes that were offered in colleges and universities today were offered in high schools at that time. So the education of children before they got out of high school was already that of somewhat of a first or second year employee who had a little bit of experience in any of those fields. And they were actually taught usually by teachers who were in the field, got older, their backs and joints and different things around, so they became teachers. So they actually had field experience, and they weren't teachers who taught out of a textbook and that's all they know. And at this time in this state, it was just starting to get around to that. There wasn't that we make a test so easy enough so all students can pass, so our school looks good and we get federal funding. This is another topic. But now, today, anybody could pass a class and really be a D or F student. You got to work really hard to not get passed to graduate nowadays. The schools are so simple. It's political stuff. It's not about education no more. But getting back to the topic of education, the students now have no metal shop. They have no auto shop. They have no machine shop. They have no wood shop. All these trade schools at the age of high school disappeared. Like when I entered in 6th grade. Full electronics with lab scopes, everything. We made little radios, we made transceivers, we made a whole bunch of little projects in 6th grade, middle school. That was Everett. I believe it was Everett. It's across from Mission High in San Francisco. For those of you in the Bay Area who know the area, for those of you in other countries and other states, it's irrelevant. You will not know where these places are. But for our local area, starting at that age, you already had machine shop, wood shop, and electronics class. All those have been eliminated. About around that time, they started eliminating all the trade school projects in high school. Now, I want to become an instructor. I know instructors and professors and stuff like that at different colleges. The big running joke now in the public domain of education system, being in a city college or university, is our students are so dumb when they come in to a class, instead of educating them, you just add water. And if you don't get that joke, you add water and you watch the vegetable grow. Because this is the level of which we have educated down to, not educated up. At once we were a nation where we were proud of being inventors. Now we just push out work drones out of our colleges and universities. Major problem. So getting back to mechanical and body shops, extremely huge shortage. I have owners of shops. I'm walking into one right now. As soon as I just pulled over, I'm walking into a shop, and every shop I walk to, owners have always asked me, do you know a painter? Do you know a body man? Do you know a mechanic? Somebody. And everybody I knew from 30 years ago, when I started in this business, and I started my own business, it was 27 years ago, going back that 30 plus years when I professionally got into field and I worked for others. There were shortages back then as technology grew. Older guys, every time the electronics hit, go back in 1974, they introduced the catalytic converter. When the catalytic converter was introduced to the automotive industry, that meant electronics had to follow. To keep that catalytic converter alive, you needed an oxygen sensor, you needed some sort of fuel feedback system. So in those days we had carburetors before mass use of fuel injection, and we had dwell time going to a carburetor feeder to feed the fuel in a carburetor. And this is before throttle bodies. You actually had like the Quadrajet, and when they started adding stuff to carburetors, trying to make carburetors do what fuel injection does today. Technology and the parts and reliability weren't quite there yet for the expense, so they just modified carburetors at that time. Older technicians were leaving in droves because they can no longer rely on the education of the mentality of, I could use a test light, I could use an old headlight with 2 wires on it to test everything. When they tried to do that to circuits like this, they were blowing up $300 and $800 body control modules, or at that days they weren't body control modules, they're just power control models, ECMs. You had the C4 control module on GM, and that's what my dad worked on. He actually used to rebuild those and resell them back to dealerships because guys, the injector drivers were blowing inside of them. You'd go down, rip one of these out, go to your local electronics shop, change the injector drivers in them to an upgraded model that wouldn't blow so easy, and put them back on the car and sell them for several $100s, and you only had like $15 in parts you put back in it, and you spent an hour rebuilding it. And back in the early 70s, that to sell something for an $800 job, that was good money for $15 in parts and an hour in labor. These kind of students don't exist anymore. And this is one of the topics that I'm on my mind, and I got to leave right now because I have a really heavy backlog of calls that came in that overbooked me for today. So this is the only video for today. The topic is lack of education in the automotive field, both body shops and mechanical shops, and the lack of schooling in the public education with the trades. Trade schools have disappeared. The ones that made an attempt to come back do a pretty poor job of it. Our university and our college systems, the guys who run them and implement what the training should be are guys who've never worked in the field themselves. They're only management, supervisors, office personnel, pencil pushers, paper shovelers, and phone answering type people trying to make decisions in a highly technical trade what deals now with electronics, a lot of physics, science, metallurgy, machining, and diagnostic procedures. And they haven't a clue, and they don't even know who to hire. You don't even have the people hiring people who know how to hire people to hire people. It's just ridiculous. So that's my topic for today. And if I ever get time, I'll get more in depth about this. And if you have any answers or questions or responses to this topic about the lack of education and trained employees, or even worse yet, owners who are not even qualified to own a mechanical shop or body shop, who cannot even train their employees because they know nothing about the automotive business except for being behind a desk. This is another problem that causes a lot of the technicians to quit. That's a whole nother topic. See you guys next time.